I often found myself staring out the kitchen window, watching the world pass by. The same old routine had settled into my life like a thick fog, dulling the vibrancy of my days. I woke up each morning, brewed a pot of coffee from the local roaster down the street, and prepared breakfast for my husband. The aroma of pancakes mixed with the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled our modest home in Maplewood. Yet, despite the warmth of the kitchen, I felt an emptiness gnawing at me. My husband, Mark, would shuffle into the kitchen a few moments later, his hair tousled and eyes still heavy with sleep. He'd offer a half-hearted smile before diving into his phone to check emails. "Got a busy day ahead," he'd say absent-mindedly, pouring syrup over his pancakes. I would nod, forcing a smile as I watched him retreat into his work life. His career had always been important to him. It was something I admired but also resented. I craved connection, something beyond this predictable cycle. One afternoon, while sorting through some old papers in my home office, I stumbled upon an invitation to an art gallery opening downtown. It was happening that Saturday evening. My heart raced at the thought of stepping outside our routine and immersing myself in something new and exciting. Maybe it was time for me to break free from this monotonous existence. As I stared at the invitation, I felt a flicker of hope, a chance to experience life again. That Saturday arrived with an uncharacteristic energy buzzing in my veins. I slipped on a simple black dress that hugged my figure just right and applied a touch of makeup, just enough to feel confident but not overdone. As I stood before the mirror adjusting my hair, I caught a glimpse of someone who had been lost for too long. The evening promised to be different. It was time to reclaim a piece of myself. Arriving at the gallery was invigorating. Vibrant colors splashed across canvases surrounded by soft murmurs from art enthusiasts discussing their interpretations. The atmosphere buzzed with creativity and excitement, a stark contrast to my quiet home life. As I wandered through the exhibits, admiring pieces from local artists, my eyes landed on familiar faces mingling among strangers. Then there he was, David, Mark's colleague from work, leaning against one of the walls with an easy smile as he engaged in conversation with another attendee. Our eyes met briefly before he excused himself from his group and approached me with genuine curiosity. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said warmly. "Neither did I," I replied, feeling both surprised and flattered by his attention. We chatted about art and our favorite pieces in the gallery while laughter danced between us like an unspoken connection forming in real time. He shared stories about his recent travels and how they inspired some of his own artwork, an unexpected depth that drew me in further than I'd anticipated. Just as we were starting to lose ourselves in conversation, Mark appeared behind me unexpectedly. "Hey. You found David?" His tone was light but carried an undercurrent of tension that made me uneasy for a moment. "Yeah. We were just talking about this piece," I said quickly, pointing toward an abstract painting nearby. Mark smiled politely but didn't linger long before excusing himself again for another networking opportunity within the gallery crowd. As he walked away, David leaned closer to me and whispered playfully, "You should come to lunch sometime." I hesitated for just a moment, the thrill of flirting igniting something dormant within me, but nodded eagerly at his suggestion instead. "I'd like that." The exchange lingered in my mind long after we parted ways that night. It felt like stepping onto shaky ground where excitement met trepidation. Back home later that evening, Mark surprised me with dinner plans, a candlelit meal prepared by him in our cozy dining room filled with soft music playing in the background. As we sat across from each other over pasta and wine, laughter filled our space, momentarily masking any underlying tension between us, the same tension that had been building for months now without acknowledgement or resolution. "Maybe we could try something different?" Mark suggested casually between bites as though testing waters he hadn't ventured into before. "What do you mean?" My curiosity piqued as I set down my fork. "I don't know, more adventures together? A weekend trip?" His eyes sparkled with hopefulness but also uncertainty. I smiled softly at him while feeling conflicted inside. Could this be what we needed? Or was it merely another way to avoid addressing our growing distance? As if sensing my hesitation or perhaps reading between unspoken lines etched across my face too well already, Mark reached out across the table, gently squeezing my hand, a gesture meant to reassure yet only deepened my inner turmoil. That night stretched on longer than usual as thoughts swirled through my mind. Could lunch with David become more than just casual? Would taking risks lead me down paths better left unexplored? And amidst all this uncertainty loomed one undeniable truth. Choices lay ahead, waiting patiently for resolution, yet poised dangerously close alongside consequences yet unseen. The next day, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, applying just a touch more lipstick than usual. I felt a mix of excitement and dread about lunch with David. My heart raced at the thought of stepping outside my comfort zone, but guilt tugged at me like an anchor. Would this be a mistake? Yet, the thrill of the unknown beckoned me forward. As I entered the local coffee shop, the aroma of fresh pastries enveloped me. I spotted David seated at a small table in the corner, his smile warm and inviting. "You made it," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I could feel my pulse quicken as I slid into the chair across from him. We exchanged pleasantries, but beneath the surface lay an unspoken tension that electrified the air between us. David leaned closer, his voice low as he shared a personal story about his recent struggles at work. "Sometimes it feels like I'm just going through the motions," he confessed. I nodded in understanding, recognizing fragments of my own life reflected in his words. Then, unexpectedly, he added, "We kissed." The confession hung in the air between us like a fragile thread waiting to snap. I was taken aback, my mind racing. Did we really share that moment? The weight of our actions pressed down on me as I grappled with my emotions. "It was just one moment," I murmured defensively, yet part of me relished remembering it vividly, the warmth and connection that had sparked so suddenly. David's gaze softened as he reached across the table to touch my hand lightly. "Maybe we should explore this further," he suggested tentatively. My heart skipped a beat at his proposition. It was both exhilarating and terrifying to consider meeting again outside this casual setting. When I returned home later that afternoon, an unsettling feeling settled over me like a heavy fog. My husband was already in the living room, flipping through channels on TV while sipping a glass of wine. He looked up and smiled at me, but there was something unreadable in his expression that made me uneasy. "How was your lunch?" he asked casually. I paused for a moment before replying with practiced ease, "Just fine." Yet inside me churned an ocean of conflicting emotions, my heart racing at thoughts of David while simultaneously feeling guilty for betraying my husband's trust. Later that evening, as we settled into bed together under the dim light of our bedside lamp, my husband turned to me with an unexpected proposal. "What do you think about trying something new together? Maybe a weekend getaway?" His suggestion caught me off guard. It seemed almost too perfect amid my turmoil. I hesitated for just a second before forcing a smile and nodding in agreement. "That sounds nice," I replied softly while inwardly grappling with how to balance both worlds without losing myself entirely. The next morning brought fresh complications when my phone buzzed with a message from David. "Can we meet again soon?" A thrill ran through me despite knowing how dangerous this dance had become. With every interaction with him and every secret kept from my husband, I felt increasingly trapped between two lives, each pulling me in opposite directions. As days passed leading up to our next encounter, tension built within our household like an unsteady tower about to collapse under its own weight. My husband seemed more observant than usual. Little things began to shift, the way he looked at me during dinner or how he lingered on questions about my day. Finally, unable to contain myself any longer after another long day at work filled with anticipation for David's company, I agreed to meet him again after work at an art gallery opening downtown. The thought sent shivers down my spine. it felt both thrilling and reckless to step out into public while hiding so much underneath. The gallery buzzed with chatter as guests admired vibrant paintings lining the walls, a stark contrast to the monochrome routine of my life back home. When David arrived, his presence lit up the room for me. We exchanged knowing glances that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. "Glad you came," he said softly as we stepped away from prying eyes into a quieter corner filled with abstract sculptures, each piece reflecting fragments of our own hidden complexities. But just then, a sudden realization gripped me hard. What if my husband had shown up here too? The thought sent chills through me as panic threatened to unravel everything I'd been building secretly with David. "Is everything okay?" David asked when he noticed my sudden shift in demeanor. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," I insisted too quickly while scanning the crowd anxiously for any sign of familiarity among strangers around us, anxiety bubbling beneath every surface interaction like boiling water ready to spill over. In that momentary lapse between exhilaration and fear, my phone vibrated once more against my thigh. "Where are you?" It was from my husband, a question laden with unspoken suspicion that sent urgency coursing through my veins like electricity igniting flames within shadows lurking close by. I glanced back at David, who seemed oblivious yet concerned, as if sensing something amiss within our fragile bubble built upon stolen moments and whispered secrets, but now reality loomed larger than ever before, threatening all we'd begun exploring together. I felt the weight of my husband's message pressing down on me, a reminder of the life I had built and the choices I was now questioning. David looked at me, his brow furrowed, as if trying to decode my thoughts. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with concern. I forced a smile, hoping it would mask my internal turmoil. "Just a little distracted," I replied, glancing at my phone again. My heart raced as I considered how to respond to Mark's text. The thrill of our lunch lingered in my mind, our shared stories, laughter, and that moment when nuestros labios se encontraron. It felt intoxicating and terrifying all at once. As we finished our coffee, David suggested we take a walk in the nearby park. "It's such a nice day," he said, attempting to lighten the mood. I nodded absent-mindedly, my thoughts still wrapped around Mark's flirty tone. The park was alive with children playing and couples strolling hand in hand. It felt like a world apart from the tension brewing within me. While walking, David turned to me and asked, "Have you thought more about trying something new together?" My stomach dropped at his words. Did he suspect anything? "I think it could be good for us," he continued, oblivious to my inner conflict. I wanted to scream that I was already exploring something new, something dangerous. "Yeah, maybe," I managed to say as we passed a group of teenagers laughing nearby. The sound reminded me of the carefree moments of youth that now felt so distant from my current reality. David smiled at me, but all I could think about was how easy it would be to slip back into routine after this brief escape. Later that evening, as we settled on the couch together for dinner, my phone buzzed again. It was Mark. "Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart raced as excitement mingled with guilt. I quickly typed back an affirmative response before David could see what was happening. He glanced over curiously but said nothing. "Who's that?" he asked casually while pouring himself another glass of wine. The question hung in the air like thick fog as I fought against the urge to reveal everything, or nothing at all. "Just a friend from work," I replied too quickly, hoping it sounded convincing enough. "Sounds good," he said with a smile before turning his attention back to the television screen. As much as I tried to focus on our evening together, my mind wandered back to Mark and our plans for tomorrow, a secret rendezvous that felt both thrilling and perilous. The next day arrived with an electric pulse in the air as I prepared for lunch with Mark. Each moment dragged painfully slow until finally, I found myself sitting across from him at an upscale restaurant downtown. The ambience buzzed with quiet chatter and soft music playing in the background. It felt intimate yet overwhelming. Mark leaned closer across the table and whispered conspiratorially about his latest project at work before changing topics entirely. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking about you." My breath hitched. This wasn't just flirtation anymore, it was becoming something deeper than either of us had anticipated. We kissed. His voice dropped lower than before, as if sharing a secret meant just for me alone. A rush of warmth flooded through me at those words. The thrill mixed with anxiety surged like waves crashing against rocks on a stormy sea. "I didn't expect this," I confessed quietly while avoiding eye contact. Guilt gnawed at me like an insatiable beast lurking just beneath my surface, emotions threatening to spill over into chaos. "I know it's complicated," he replied gently yet firmly while reaching out and touching my hand across the table, a connection that sent shivers down my spine despite every warning bell ringing within me. As lunch came to an end, Mark suggested we meet later that week for dinner, just us two again, to explore this connection further without any distractions or interruptions from our daily lives or responsibilities weighing us down like anchors dragging us underwater. I hesitated briefly before agreeing. Each decision felt monumental now, the stakes higher than ever before. Yet there was something exhilarating about stepping into unknown territory where passion ignited new possibilities even amidst uncertainty looming ahead like dark clouds gathering overhead ready to unleash their fury upon unsuspecting souls below. Returning home later that evening brought no relief. Instead, a growing sense of dread settled heavily upon my shoulders like an unwelcome cloak, suffocating every ounce of joy left within me after spending time with Mark earlier today. David greeted me warmly but seemed more attentive than usual, his eyes searching mine for signs of anything amiss, a flicker of doubt perhaps? It unnerved me how easily he could read between lines where secrets lay hidden beneath layers upon layers built over years spent together navigating life's twists and turns without losing sight entirely until now. As we sat down for dinner together, both lost in our own thoughts, I couldn't shake off feeling trapped between two worlds colliding head-on, threatening everything familiar around us while simultaneously opening doors leading towards uncharted territories filled with possibilities beyond imagination if only willing enough, brave enough, dare venture forth despite risks involved. And then suddenly, a text notification chimed from my phone, breaking through silence enveloping us both, another message from Mark demanding clarity about where things were headed between us moving forward. My heart raced once more, caught between wanting freedom yet fearing consequences looming ahead, knowing full well this would change everything forever whether ready or not. The moment I read Mark's message, a wave of anxiety washed over me. I had been navigating this delicate balance between my mundane life and the thrill of my secret with David. The thought of choosing one path over the other felt suffocating. I glanced at David, who was still absorbed in his own thoughts, unaware of the turmoil brewing inside me. "Are you okay?" he asked, breaking the silence. His voice pulled me back to reality. "Yeah, just thinking about work," I lied, forcing a smile. The truth was far more complicated than that. My mind raced with the implications of Mark's words. He wanted clarity, but how could I give him that without unraveling everything? David suggested we take a walk in the park nearby to clear our heads. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood as we strolled along the path lined with children playing and couples enjoying their evening. It felt like an ordinary day, yet everything felt different for me. I was living a double life. As we walked, David shared plans for a weekend getaway he had been considering for us. "I thought it might be nice to reconnect," he said casually. "Sounds great," I replied, though my heart sank at the thought of leaving behind my secret rendezvous with David. My mind drifted back to our last meeting, how we spent night together in laughter and whispered secrets that felt so alive compared to my routine life. Returning home later that evening felt surreal. The familiar sights of our living room surrounded me like a comforting blanket while simultaneously suffocating me with guilt and confusion. I received another text from Mark just as I settled onto the couch. "We need to talk about us." I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity before responding with a simple okay. The weight of that word hung heavily in the air between my two lives, one filled with excitement and uncertainty, and another steeped in stability yet void of passion. Days passed in a blur as I tried to juggle both worlds without raising suspicion from David or losing myself in the process. At work, Mark grew increasingly impatient during our conversations, hinting at wanting more than just casual meetings over lunch. One afternoon in the break room, he cornered me while others chatted around us. "I can't keep pretending this is just fun," he said quietly but firmly. "I know," I replied, feeling cornered by his intensity and my own emotions swirling inside me. "Then let's make it official," he urged, his eyes searching mine for an answer I wasn't ready to give. I left feeling overwhelmed by his proposal and unsure how to respond without completely shattering what little stability I had left at home. That night at dinner, David seemed more attentive than usual, asking about my day and sharing stories from work, his effort making my heart ache even more. "I'm glad you're busy, it keeps you engaged," he remarked lightly as we finished our meal together. "Yes, busy is good," I replied absently while thoughts of Mark's ultimatum consumed me once again. Could I really go through with this? The next morning brought no relief. Instead, it only deepened my dilemma when David announced he would be working late again that evening due to an unexpected deadline at work. My stomach twisted at the thought. Would this be another opportunity for Mark? Or would it push me closer to deciding between them? As dusk fell outside our home later that night, temptation gnawed at me relentlessly. With David away and nothing holding me back anymore, I texted Mark, "Let's meet tonight." His response came almost instantly, "Where?" I hesitated before suggesting a small cafe where we could talk away from prying eyes, not wanting anyone to see us together or catch wind of what was happening behind closed doors. Arriving first at the cafe set off a flurry of nerves within me. Every second stretched into eternity as I waited for him to arrive while replaying all our moments together, the laughter shared over lunch breaks and those stolen kisses that ignited something within me. When Mark finally walked through those doors looking effortlessly charming as always, all doubts momentarily faded away as he approached with purpose. "Hey," he said softly as he slid into the seat across from mine. "Hi." My pulse quickened as memories flooded back. The thrill combined with fear made it exhilarating yet terrifying all at once. Before long we were deep into conversation about our lives, sharing secrets and dreams, and then suddenly came another kiss that ignited everything around us like fireworks exploding in darkness. We kissed. Yet even amidst this spark of connection lingered uncertainty. Could this truly be what we both wanted? As if sensing my hesitation again, Mark leaned closer and whispered urgently, "What are you waiting for?" His words echoed painfully in my mind as reality crashed back down on me like cold water splashing against skin. I had commitments waiting back home, choices looming ahead demanding resolution before time ran out on all fronts. And just then my phone buzzed again. It was David asking when I'd be home. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. David's message felt like a weighty reminder of the life I was trying to escape. "When will you be home?" he asked, his concern palpable even through the text. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The thrill of my recent encounters clashed violently with the obligations that awaited me. The office break room was buzzing with chatter when I arrived for my afternoon coffee. Colleagues gathered around the table, discussing weekend plans and office gossip. I forced a smile, but inside I felt disconnected. My mind drifted to David and how he had stayed late at work last night, leaving me alone to wrestle with my thoughts. Had he sensed something? "Hey, are you okay?" a coworker asked, tilting her head in concern. I nodded quickly, not wanting to reveal my inner turmoil. "Just tired," I replied, pouring coffee into a paper cup that felt too small for the weight of my secrets. Later that day, as I sat in my car waiting for traffic to clear, a message from Alex popped up on my phone. "Can we talk? Meet me at the park?" My heart raced again. This was a risky move. The park was public but intimate enough for our conversations to feel secretive. I glanced at the clock. It was now or never. When I arrived at the park, children laughed nearby as they played on swings while parents watched from benches. The air was fresh and invigorating, yet all I could feel was anxiety tightening around me like a noose. Alex stood by a tree, looking casual yet handsome in his fitted shirt and jeans. He smiled when he saw me approach. "Thanks for coming," he said softly as we walked further into the park's shaded area. "I wanted to see you." His voice held an urgency that made my stomach churn with anticipation. "I'm not sure this is wise," I replied cautiously, glancing around to ensure no familiar faces were watching us. "Let's just talk," he urged gently. "I've been thinking about us." My heart skipped. His words ignited both hope and fear within me. As we settled on a bench hidden by foliage, Alex leaned closer and confessed how he felt about our connection. "I think we have something special," he said earnestly. "I don't want to hide anymore." His intensity captivated me despite the guilt gnawing at my conscience. "I can't just abandon everything," I murmured defensively, torn between desire and responsibility. "Why not?" he pressed gently. "You deserve happiness too." His words echoed in my mind like a siren's call. Suddenly, a familiar figure caught my eye across the park. David was walking towards us with an expression of confusion etched across his face. Panic surged through me as time seemed to freeze. What would happen if he saw us together? "Is that—" Alex started but stopped short when he realized who it was. "Stay calm," I whispered urgently as David approached us with determination in his stride. "What are you doing here?" David asked sharply, eyes darting between us as if trying to piece together an unsettling puzzle. My voice faltered under his intense gaze. Alex stood up quickly, sensing the tension thickening in the air. "We were just talking about work," he said smoothly but with an edge of nervousness. David's eyes narrowed suspiciously before shifting back to me. "Really?" "Because it looks more than that." His voice carried an authority that sent shivers down my spine. He knew something wasn't right. "I should go," Alex said abruptly before walking away briskly without another word. David turned back to me with disappointment reflected in his gaze. "What's going on? You've been distant lately." "I've just been busy," I lied instinctively while avoiding his eyes. He crossed his arms defensively but didn't push further. Instead, he sighed deeply as if weighing his next words carefully. "Maybe we need some time together this weekend? Just us." His suggestion hung heavy in the air between us like an unspoken ultimatum, a chance to reconnect amidst chaos or perhaps solidify our growing distance further apart. I nodded slowly despite feeling trapped between two lives pulling me in opposite directions, one filled with familiarity and safety while another promised excitement tinged with danger. As we drove home later that evening under fading twilight skies filled with uncertainty about our future together looming ahead like dark clouds ready to unleash their storm, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Alex asking if we could meet later that week for dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown known for its intimate atmosphere and soft music playing against candlelight flickering around tables occupied by couples lost in their own worlds. The invitation sent another wave of exhilaration mixed with dread coursing through my veins. Could I really juggle both worlds without losing myself entirely along this precarious path? In that moment of hesitation before responding back, my heart raced wildly as if caught between two competing desires pulling me apart from within. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the screen as I contemplated my response. The thrill of the invitation felt intoxicating, but so did the weight of my reality. I typed back a simple yes, and pressed send before I could second-guess myself. The decision felt both liberating and terrifying, as if I had crossed an unseen line. The next day, I arrived at the upscale restaurant, my heart pounding with anticipation. As I stepped inside, The warm glow of candlelight wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. I spotted him across the room, his eyes lighting up as they met mine. We exchanged casual greetings, but beneath the surface, an electric tension crackled between us. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. It was easy to lose myself in his laughter and charm. He leaned closer, sharing a story that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. "You know," he said softly, "I really like spending time with you." My heart raced. It was more than just friendly banter. Then he said it, "We spent the night together." The words hung in the air between us like unspoken promises. My pulse quickened as I realized how much I craved this connection. But guilt gnawed at me from within. Images of my husband flickered in my mind like an unwelcome shadow. As we finished our meals, he suggested we take a walk outside to enjoy the cool evening air. The park nearby was alive with laughter from children playing under twinkling lights strung across trees. It felt surreal to be out there with him, away from responsibilities and expectations. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my husband asking how my evening was going. Panic surged through me as I glanced at my companion's curious expression. "Just dinner with some friends," I replied hastily, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than anything genuine. He looked skeptical but didn't push further. Instead, he took my hand gently and led me down a quieter path lined with blooming flowers. It was beautiful and serene, yet every step felt like walking on a tightrope strung over uncertainty. "I've been thinking," he began cautiously, "about us." My stomach twisted at his words, anticipation mingled with fear as he continued. "I want to explore this connection more seriously." My heart raced at his proposal while dread crept in. What would that mean for everything else? Before I could respond, we heard footsteps approaching behind us, the unmistakable sound of heels clicking against pavement. It was then that I froze in place. Recognition hit me hard as I turned to see my husband walking toward us with an expression that shifted from surprise to something darker. "What are you doing here?" His voice cut through the night air like ice. Caught off guard by his unexpected presence and furious gaze, panic surged through me again as reality crashed down around us like shards of glass scattering on concrete. My heart raced as both men stared at each other, two worlds colliding violently before me. "We were just," words escaped me as confusion clouded any coherent explanation. My husband's eyes narrowed, disappointment etched deep lines into his face as he took stock of our intertwined hands. The silence stretched painfully between us until he finally turned away without another word, his retreat leaving a hollow ache in its wake. "Should we talk?" my colleague asked hesitantly after what felt like an eternity of silence. "No," I whispered back firmly despite the turmoil inside me. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't deepen this mess further. The rest of the evening passed in muted conversation filled with awkward tension, a stark contrast to the excitement that had initially drawn us together moments before this confrontation shattered everything apart. As we parted ways outside the restaurant later that night, uncertainty loomed heavily over me like storm clouds gathering on an otherwise clear horizon. Would this moment define everything going forward? Or would it simply become another regret lost among countless others? I climbed into my car feeling numb, my mind racing through possibilities while trying desperately not to think about what lay ahead for either relationship now hanging by threads woven from deception and desire alike. But just then, my phone buzzed again, a text alert flashing across the screen demanding attention amidst chaos swirling within. "We need to talk." It was from him, the one who had been waiting patiently for clarity while all along holding secrets of his own close to his chest. With trembling hands gripping the steering wheel tightly against mounting anxiety coursing through me, I realized something vital. There would be no escaping this tangled web anymore. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. The message felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. "We need to talk." I knew what that meant. It was a call to confront the mess I had created, but I also sensed that it was more than just about us. My mind raced back to last night, how we spent the night together, and the intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed my husband's car parked in front of the house. He was home early. Anxiety twisted in my stomach. What would he say? Did he suspect anything? I took a deep breath before stepping inside, determined to keep my composure. "Hey," he greeted me with a warm smile that felt oddly out of place given the tension hanging in the air. "How was your day?" His eyes searched mine for a hint of truth, but I forced myself to maintain a steady gaze. "It was fine," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Just the usual." He nodded, but his expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern crossed his face. "Are you sure? You seem distant lately." His words pierced through my facade, and for a moment, I considered confessing everything. But then my phone buzzed again, a text from him, "Can we meet tonight?" The urgency in his message pulled me back into my secret life. "I've just been busy with work," I said quickly, avoiding his gaze as I moved toward the kitchen. The scent of dinner filled the air. He had cooked something special for us. My heart sank at the thought of how much effort he put into this evening while I was preoccupied with someone else. "Dinner's almost ready," he said, following me into the kitchen. "I thought we could use some time together." The sincerity in his voice made guilt wash over me like a tidal wave. "I appreciate it," I managed to say, forcing a smile as I set the table. But even as we ate together, laughter echoing off the walls like an old memory, all I could think about was him, the colleague who had stirred feelings within me that were both exhilarating and dangerous. After dinner, as we settled on the couch for an evening movie, my phone buzzed once more. It was him again. "I can't stop thinking about last night." My pulse quickened at those words. My heart betrayed me as it raced with excitement and trepidation. "Everything okay?" my husband asked, noticing my distraction. "Yeah," I replied too quickly, trying to hide my phone from view as panic surged within me. "Just some work stuff." He frowned but didn't press further. As soon as he turned his attention back to the screen, I slipped away to respond, "I can't either." "Can we talk?" My fingers trembled as I hit send. Each message felt like another step deeper into this tangled affair. Later that night, after my husband had gone to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thoughts swirling like leaves caught in an autumn windstorm. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly while excitement simmered beneath it all. It felt like two worlds colliding within me. The next morning brought no relief. Instead, it only intensified my turmoil when he texted again, "Let's meet today during lunch." A part of me wanted to say no, to back away from this precarious edge, but another part craved that connection more than anything else. At work that day, every moment dragged on painfully slow until lunch finally arrived. As soon as we were alone in our usual spot at the cafe down the street, the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with pastries, I felt both nervous and exhilarated. "You look different today," he said with a teasing smile as he slid into the booth across from me. "Different how?" "More alive," he replied softly before taking a sip of his coffee. His eyes sparkled with something unspoken between us. I couldn't help but smile back despite myself. It felt good being seen like this again after feeling invisible for so long at home. But then reality crashed down around us when he leaned closer and said quietly, "We need to take this further." My heart raced. It wasn't just flirtation anymore, it was becoming serious. "I don't know if," my voice faltered as uncertainty flooded through me like ice water. What did further even mean? He reached across the table and took my hand gently, his touch igniting something deep within me that both thrilled and terrified me all at once. Just then, a familiar face walked past our table. It was one of our colleagues who worked closely with both of us at times. I pulled away instinctively as panic surged through me. What if they saw us? What would happen if anyone found out? "Relax," he whispered with an amused grin that made everything feel lighter for just a moment before reality crashed back down around us again. This wasn't just fun anymore, it had become complicated beyond measure. As lunch drew to an end and reality beckoned us back outside those four walls, I realized something profound: there would be no easy way out anymore. The tension in my home life escalated as I tried to maintain the facade of normalcy. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, balancing my feelings for my husband and my growing attachment to his colleague. My heart raced each time I received a text from him, but I couldn't let it show. When my husband suggested we consider therapy, I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Maybe we should talk to someone," he said one evening over dinner, his voice steady but concerned. My stomach twisted at the thought of revealing my secrets to a stranger. "I just think we could use some help." I nodded silently, feeling trapped. The idea of therapy made me question everything about our marriage, including the choices I had made recently. It was easier to focus on the thrill of my secret life than confront the reality of my marriage. Meanwhile, my colleague expressed doubts about our affair during our next lunch meeting at a quaint cafe downtown. "I don't know if this is what I want anymore," he admitted quietly, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Those words hung heavy in the air between us. Was he pulling away? Or was it just his way of testing me? "We can take things slow," I suggested, trying to reassure him while internally grappling with my own feelings. The thrill had been intoxicating, but now it felt like a double-edged sword cutting deeper into both our lives. As days passed, I noticed subtle changes in my husband's behavior too. He seemed more attentive yet distant at times, as if he was sensing something was off but couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. One evening, while scrolling through my phone in bed, I felt the weight of guilt settle heavily on me when I saw a message from my colleague pop up. "Can we talk? It's important." My heart raced as I glanced over at my husband sleeping beside me. What would happen if he found out? Just then, I heard him stir awake and mumble something about needing to discuss plans for the weekend, a chance for us to reconnect. "We should go hiking or something," he suggested with hopeful eyes. "Just us." I forced a smile, nodding along even as dread bubbled within me. How could we reconnect when everything felt so disconnected? My mind raced with thoughts of how to juggle both relationships without losing either one. Later that night, while lying awake in bed beside him, I received another message from my colleague. "I need clarity on where we stand." The words struck fear into me. Clarity meant decisions that could unravel everything. In an attempt to distract myself from spiraling thoughts, I turned toward my husband and whispered softly about our weekend plans again. He smiled and pulled me closer, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. But later that week brought an unexpected twist when I returned home after work one evening to find him sitting at the kitchen table with an open laptop in front of him, my text messages displayed on the screen. "Who is this?" he asked calmly but with an edge that sent chills down my spine. I froze at the doorway, all thoughts fled as panic set in. My heart raced wildly as adrenaline coursed through me. This was it, everything was about to change forever. "I can explain," I stammered finally, knowing full well that there were no good explanations left to give. He raised an eyebrow and leaned back in his chair. "Explain what? Your little secret life?" The accusation hung heavily between us like a storm cloud ready to burst open. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I confessed weakly as tears threatened to spill over. My carefully constructed world was crumbling around me. Just then, his expression softened slightly as if contemplating something deeper than anger or betrayal. "We could have worked through this together." But could we? Would anything ever be the same again after this moment? In that instant of vulnerability between us came another twist. A notification pinged from his phone on the table. My colleague had sent a message asking if we were still on for lunch tomorrow. "Are you serious?" My husband's voice dripped with disbelief as he glanced back up at me. caught between two worlds and facing undeniable consequences from both sides left me reeling. Each choice now felt heavier than before. What would be left when all this dust settled? I took a deep breath and prepared myself for whatever came next. There would be no escaping this reality any longer. The tension in my chest tightened as I faced the morning light filtering through the kitchen window. My husband, Mark, was already at the table, his newspaper spread out before him. He looked up, a hint of concern in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked, his voice steady yet probing. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. "Just tired," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. The bitter aroma filled the air, but it did little to ease the turmoil inside me. Mark suggested we plan a trip together to rekindle our connection. "How about that cabin by the lake?" he proposed, glancing up from his paper. The idea was appealing yet suffocating. It felt like an attempt to patch up cracks that were only widening. I hesitated, my mind racing with thoughts of Carlos and our last conversation. "Let's think about it," I said cautiously, avoiding his gaze. The weight of my indecision hung between us like an unspoken truth. Later that day at work, Carlos cornered me in the break room. "We need to talk about us," he said bluntly, leaning against the counter with an intensity that made my heart race. I could see the urgency in his eyes. He wanted clarity on where we stood. "I'm not sure what you mean," I stammered, feeling trapped between two lives. His frustration was palpable as he pressed on. "I can't keep waiting for you to decide." His words struck deep, igniting fears I had tried to suppress. My heart raced as I recalled how we kissed last week and how intoxicating it felt to escape reality with him. "I need time," I finally managed to say, hoping it would quell his anxiety while buying me some breathing space. As evening fell and I returned home, Mark was waiting for me in the living room with an open laptop displaying vacation options. "Look at this one. It has hiking trails and a beautiful view," he said enthusiastically. My heart sank further into conflict as I glanced at the screen filled with images of serene landscapes, places where we could reconnect and perhaps heal our marriage. But all I could think about was Carlos's demand for commitment and my growing fear of losing both men in my life. "Let's just keep looking," I suggested weakly, trying to mask my inner turmoil while feeling like a stranger in my own home. That night brought no relief. Sleep eluded me as thoughts spiraled out of control. The next morning, Carlos sent me a text, "We need to make this official." The message sent chills down my spine, a demand that felt impossible to meet amidst my crumbling marriage and Mark's hopeful plans. At breakfast, Mark casually mentioned therapy again as if it were just another item on his agenda. "I think it could really help us," he said earnestly while pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. I stared at him blankly. Every suggestion felt like another layer of pressure added to an already heavy burden. How could I explain that part of me wanted this therapy while another part craved freedom from all expectations? "I'll think about it," I replied flatly, knowing full well that time was running out for both decisions and relationships alike. As days passed without resolution or clarity from either side, Carlos grew increasingly impatient during our brief encounters at work. One afternoon as we stood close in the office break room again, he leaned in closer and whispered urgently, "I can't keep waiting forever." His words echoed in my mind long after he left. They haunted me during quiet moments alone when doubt crept back into my heart like an unwelcome visitor. Meanwhile, Mark continued planning our getaway with unwavering optimism, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within me regarding Carlos's ultimatum. Finally, one evening after dinner when everything seemed too quiet and normal around us, Mark casually asked if we could finalize details for our trip soon. Instead of responding immediately as I usually would have done without hesitation, I hesitated again, a silence stretching between us thick with unspoken truths. "Is something wrong?" Mark asked gently but firmly now. There was no escaping this moment any longer. It demanded honesty from both sides. Caught off guard by his directness, I knew then that whatever choice lay ahead would change everything irrevocably. My heart raced at what came next. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "No, everything's fine," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of my true feelings. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could see through the facade I had carefully built over the past few months. "Are you sure? You've been distant lately," he pressed, concern etched on his face. I shifted uncomfortably in my chair, the weight of my secrets pressing down on me. The truth was that I was anything but fine. I was tangled in a web of lies and desires that had spiraled beyond my control. "I've just been busy with work," I said, hoping to deflect his attention. But Mark wasn't convinced. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as if preparing for a deeper conversation. "Maybe we should talk about us," he suggested softly. My stomach churned at the thought of what lay ahead. As we sat in silence, memories flooded my mind, moments of laughter and connection that seemed so distant now. It was hard to reconcile the love we once shared with the emptiness that had settled between us. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table, breaking the tension in the air. It was a message from David, *, "Can we meet? Need to talk." *, my heart sank. I had hoped for clarity but now felt only dread. "I need to take this," I said quickly, standing up and stepping outside before Mark could respond. The cool breeze hit my face as I read David's message again, feeling both excitement and fear rush through me. Meeting him would mean confronting everything I had tried to ignore. "You okay?" Mark called after me, his voice laced with worry. I forced another smile before replying, "Just a work thing." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue as I stepped further away from him. David awaited me at our usual spot in the park, a quiet bench shaded by overhanging trees where we'd shared countless conversations and secrets. As I approached, he looked up with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Hey," he greeted softly but firmly. "Hey," I replied, taking a seat beside him. His expression shifted from casual to serious almost instantly. "We need to talk about where this is going." My heart raced. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "I know things have been complicated," I started cautiously, unsure of how to express what had been brewing inside me for so long. David nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine for answers that felt too heavy to articulate. "I can't keep doing this without knowing what you want," he said finally, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "It's not fair to either of us." The weight of his words hung in the air between us like an unspoken truth. Suddenly overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, my life with Mark versus this thrilling yet dangerous connection, I realized how deeply intertwined our lives had become without me even noticing. "Maybe." I hesitated as thoughts swirled around in my mind like leaves caught in an autumn wind. "Maybe we should take a step back." The moment hung heavy with implications. Uncertainty loomed just beyond our reach. David's expression changed subtly, disappointment flashed across his face before he masked it with indifference. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away?" His tone cut deeper than expected. "It's complicated," I murmured softly as guilt washed over me again. Every decision seemed tinged with regret and fear of losing everything I'd built over years. "Complicated or not," he insisted quietly but firmly, "we need clarity." His gaze bore into mine as if searching for resolve within me that even I couldn't find right now. The tension crackled between us like static electricity. It was clear our paths diverged at this moment, one leading back toward familiar comfort while another beckoned toward unknown excitement and pain alike. As if sensing my hesitation, David leaned closer, the air thickened around us, but before anything could happen or be decided further. My phone buzzed again loudly against the wooden bench between us, Mark's name flashing across the screen like an urgent warning sign. *, where are you? *. Panic surged within me, Each second stretched out painfully as uncertainty clawed at my insides. The choice loomed larger than ever before, stay or go? I glanced up at David one last time, his eyes filled with questions I didn't have answers for, and then turned abruptly toward home without responding further or acknowledging what lay ahead. What awaited me there would surely change everything yet again, a confrontation born from silence and secrets long kept hidden beneath layers of routine life.